So I was thinking about the most fair deck we could possibly build for $15, with the commander, of course, being worth $1 or less. And I came up with the perfect commander, a commander that doesn't get anybody upset whatsoever. You put it down on the table, nobody targets you, you have a wonderful time. Guys, today's commander we're going to be building a deck around is none other than Turgid. Okay, so it's not Turgid, but, you know, I guarantee you there's at least somebody typing in the comment section right now about how it definitely can't be Turgid. Both because, holy shit, everybody will target you, and also because she does not fit the budgetary restrictions. But what if we could play fair Turgid, you know? Fair Turgid. Lorcan, the Warlock Collector. This 6/6/7 mana behemoth has flying, and whenever a creature is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, you may pay life equal to its mana value. If you do, put it on the battlefield, and then it's a Warlock. And if a Warlock you control dies, you exile it. So this is one of those commanders that you're going to play once, realize that everybody is going to think, oh, you're not the threat. And then you will be the giant threat at the table. You are going to be the problem. Everybody is going to hate you. I mean, love you. Everybody is going to love you. Nobody possibly could have any problem with you playing this deck. Let's talk about what this deck does. So, our strategy is going to be kill everything our opponents have ever. Never stop killing every card they have. They are not allowed to keep cards on the battlefield. We are the only ones allowed to keep cards, and the cards we keep are their cards. We don't need straight win conditions. Our opponents play win conditions. We think their cards are pretty sweet, so we're going to play their cards, and we're going to play their cards a lot. So how are we going to survive doing this effect? We have to pay life equal to the mana value of every single card we put on the battlefield. So how are we going to be managing that? Well, let's take a look at the deck build. Let's start with an 8-card deep life gain section, starting with Trading Post. We can discard a card to gain 4 life. We can pay a life to make a goat. We can sack a creature on our board to take an artifact from our grave and put it in our hand, or we can sack an artifact to draw a card. This is a utility piece that lets us do basically everything we possibly could want in a black deck. Then we have Demon's Horn. Anytime any player, not just you, casts a black spell, you gain a life. Profane Memento. Whenever a creature is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, you gain a life. Sangromancer. When a creature an opponent control dies, you gain a life. When they discard a card, you gain a life. Death Greeter. Whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from play, you gain a life. Staff of the Death Magus. When you cast a black spell or a swamp enters the battlefield, you gain a life. Disciple of Gristlebrand. We can sack a creature to gain life equal to its toughness. So we can take our opponent's creatures and then just sack them to regain our life if our opponents have better creatures that just touch the grave. We want access to all of the best cards. And then finally, if we want to get lots of life all at once, we have Gray, the Merchant of Asphodel, also known as Gary. Gary's a wonderful card. He wins games when he comes into the battlefield. We have the ability to reanimate Gary many times. So if we can't kill our opponents with their cards, we at least have one card that we can kill them with pretty easily. But we have another problem. Our commander costs 7 mana. How in the heck are we going to get to that absurd mana value? Well, here's how we're going to be doing it. Take a look at our ramp package. We start with the Myr Convert. We have a 15-card deep ramp package. Myr Convert lets us pay 2 life to add a mana of any color. Scampering Surveyor gets any basic land out of our deck to the battlefield. Command Sphere can be a draw card in a pinch and also can tap for any color. Charcoal Diamond can tap for black. Pristine Talisman taps for colorless, but it also gains us a life when we do it. Fracturing Power Stone is basically a generic 2-mana mana rock. Honored Heirloom gives us the ability to turn graveyards into spaghetti while also being a mana rock. Hedron Archive can be a draw card in a pinch while also being a big mana rock. Sisay's Ring is another big mana rock we get to play in this deck because we need lots of mana fast, and if we're not killing our opponent's cards, we need to be ramping up to our commander. Wayfarer's Bauble will get a swamp out of our deck. Prismatic Lens can tap for a colorless mana. Worn Power Stone is another big mana rock, taps for 2. Leaden Myr is a creature mana rock that taps for black. Defiler of Flesh lets us take 1 black pip on any card and turn it into 2 life that we are paying. And then Solemn Simulacrum When it enters the battlefield, we get a land, and then if we get it to die, we draw a card. Sad Robot puts in work in every deck, but it puts in extra work in a black deck. So how are we going to be making sure that we get all of the cards we want during our game? Here's how we ramp to the commander. We have commander all the time, but we also need a good draw package to get to our goals. So let's take a look at the 11 card deep draw package that we are running, starting with Feed the Infection. You draw 3 cards and lose 3 life. Ancient Craving and Ambition's cost are the same cards. Then we have the Great Door Matzalantli. We can draw a card and discard a card when we tap it. We can also pay 4 to transform it, and it gives us mana equal to the amount of permanent cards in our graveyard. So this, if we cannot get the mana rocks that we need, Matzalantli will also get us there just by itself. Then we have Hostile Negotiations. It's Fact or Fiction for black. Give your opponent 2 piles of cards. 1 pile's face up, 1 pile's face down. They get to choose if you get the face up pile or they gamble on the face down pile. Then you have Read the Bones. Scry 2, draw 2, and then lose 2 life. Starving Revenant. Whenever it enters the battlefield, you can surveil 2. Then for every card you put on top of your library, you then draw a card and lose 3 life. So you either throw both cards into the graveyard and lose nothing, or keep both cards on top and lose 6. If you draw a card and there are 8 or more permanents in your graveyard, which there will be, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. We get a little bit of extra burn from this, but more importantly, this card also gives us the ability to gain more life throughout the game. There's a couple cards that we're going to be using to pay that life too. We also have Greed. We can pay 2 life to draw a card. We're going to be gaining lots of life, so this is perfectly reasonable. We can get through our whole deck really fast with this. Disciple of Bolas lets us sack a creature, likely one of our opponent's creatures. We gain X life and draw X cards, where X is that creature's power. Note that's every time the Disciple enters the battlefield. We can abuse this very heavily later. Then we have Reckoner's Bargain. We can sack a creature and gain life equal to its mana value, and then draw 2 cards. And then we have Collector's Vault. We can use this to tap, draw a card, and discard a card, and then create a treasure token. So this is pulling double duty for us. Not only is this getting us through our deck, not only is this putting reanimation targets in our graveyard, this is also making sure that we create treasures to pay for our commander, who again costs a whopping 7. So we need every method possible. This is why our draw section also includes cards that double as ramp, because we need all the mana possible. Our deck turns online when our commander's on the board, and it's basically a control deck until then. And our backup plan for when we lose our commander is, well, we have a deep reanimation package to make sure that even when our commander dies, we are backing him up with reanimation. Let's take a look here. Geth, Thane of Contracts, makes other creatures you control get -1/-1, but you can tap him and pay 3 to return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it gains if this creature would leave the battlefield. Exile it instead of putting it somewhere else, so we're basically getting the old version of finality counters on a creature. This is going to let us revive our commander when it dies, along with our Altar of Baal, which can revive a commander when it dies by getting rid of a token on our board, or in this case, we're just going to exile one of our opponent's creatures that we don't want anymore, and it's going to become an Altar of Baal sacrifice to get our commander back out. Then we have Dread Return, conveniently worded. Return any creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. Again, usually going to be our commander. And then flashback, sacrifice 3 creatures. So here's what we're going to be doing with this 9 times out of 10. We're going to sacrifice the 3 creatures we've stolen from our opponents. And keep in mind, we will almost always be stealing opponents from our creatures in sets of 3. And I'll show you why here in a sec. Then we have Geth, Lord of the Vault. We can pay black and X to put any artifact or creature with mana value X from an opponent's graveyard onto the battlefield under our control tapped. So even if our opponents get rid of our commander, Geth is going to operate as a lieutenant for us. We are going to be able to still steal their creatures and put them on our board, even if our commander bites the dust, because Geth does it too. Then we have Victimize. Choose 2 creatures in your grave, sacrifice any creature you have, return those to the battlefield tapped. Soul Exchange. Sack a creature and then exile it to take a creature from your grave and put it onto the battlefield. From the Catacombs, this gives us the initiative, which will get us another land from our deck to guarantee that we get to our commander faster. and also introduces the initiative into the game, which we will always have because we will be the only people with creatures, and we will have the best creatures because our opponents aren't playing $15 decks. They have good decks. They have strong decks. We are stealing all of their strong cards. From the Catacombs, put any creature from any graveyard onto your battlefield, and then you take the initiative. It also has Escape, so you can cast it multiple times. And then, of course, Vat of Rebirth. Anytime another artifact creature is put into a graveyard, you put an oil counter on it, remove 4 oil counters, and then you can return a creature card from the graveyard to your battlefield. This is almost always going to be used to get our commander back, because our commander dying and the rest of our board dying will trigger the Vat of Rebirth and make it live. So, we've talked about how we keep the commander up. We've talked about the lieutenants for the commander. We've talked about how we're going to draw into the cards we want. How are we making sure that our opponents are losing cards at such a rate that we are going to be able to have our commander steal everything they have and every card they love? Well, let me introduce you to a 21 card deep removal and interaction package. This is going to be a painful experience for every opponent playing a game with us. Let's start out with Voracious Fellbeast. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent sacks a creature, and then you make a food token for every creature sacrificed. Food is another way to get our life back, so we can use this to keep fueling the life we need to steal our opponent's creatures. It also gets rid of 3 creatures the turn it comes out. Baleful Beholder is one of the only ways to get rid of an enchantment in black, and it gets rid of 3 at once. Gormond. When you play it, sacrifice a creature, again, usually our opponents. Every opponent sacks a creature when Gormond comes onto the battlefield. It's also got flying and trample, so you're going to use this to hurt people a lot throughout the game. Dusk Mangler. When it comes into the battlefield, each opponent will sack a creature, discard a card, and then lose 4 life. Now note, all of these have pretty high mana costs so far, which is why our Reanimation package is as stacked as it is. If you do have to cast Dusk Mangler, you will have to pay one of the 3 costs he's imposing on the opponents before you can play him. So either for life or sacrificing a creature, you know the drill. You can also pause the video and read the card if you really need to. But Dusk Mangler is going to give us not 3 but 6 options to take from our opponents if they make the decision of putting cards from their hand into the graveyard. Then we have Chain Devil. Everybody sacks a non-token creature. Locust Heavy Destroyer. Everybody sacks a creature, and we can unearth it when we need to. We have Fleshbag Marauder. Everybody sacks a creature. Gravelighter. Everybody sacks a creature unless we've made them lose a creature, in which case it's a draw spell. Playcrafter. Everybody sacks a creature. Merciless Executioner. Everybody sacks a creature. Demon's Disciple. Everybody sacks a creature. Do you see what we're doing here? Every one of these cards comes into the battlefield. It takes 3 creatures with it, and then you get your choice of the litter of all those creatures to go onto your battlefield, or any number of them. You take your pick. You're the one playing Fair Turgid. Have fun. Then we have Bone Shards. Sack a creature card or discard a card to blow up a creature or a planeswalker. We can also get rid of one of our high-cost cards like Baleful Beholder or Voracious Fellbeast to pay for this card's cost so that we can guarantee that we can reanimate those cards easier. Then we have my boy, my friend, my son, Meteor Golem, because we are playing a black deck that cheats creatures into the battlefield, and we desperately need ways to kill enchantments, and we are playing a deck that cannot kill enchantments or artifacts very easily, because it's in black. Never let anybody tell you to only lean into your deck's strengths. You also need to patch up your deck's weaknesses, and Meteor Golem in a deck that can cheat him out or blink him patches up your deck's weaknesses very well. Oh, by the way, as we are sacrificing creatures, we also have Butcher of Malakir. Everybody sacks a creature whenever one of our creatures dies. That just guarantees us free cards. Feed the Swarm can blow up enchantments and creatures. Dalek Drone can kill a creature when it comes onto the battlefield. Mire in Misery makes every opponent sacrifice a creature or enchantment. Again, another way to remove enchantments from the board in black. Things you should be playing. Gix's Command does a lot of work for us. We can put 2 1/1 counters on one creature and give it lifelink until end of turn. Probably our commander if we do that. We can blow up each creature with power 2 or less, giving us lots of options for our commander. We can return 2 creature cards from our graveyard to our hand. Again, we can get our commander back to our hand if it dies so that we can make sure that we are not paying its command tax over and over again. Or we can make every opponent sacrifice a creature with the highest power among creatures they control. We get to choose 2 of these, so we can actually devastate all of the boards at once by just saying all creatures with power 2 or less die, and each of you sacrifice your strongest creature. I'm going to reanimate 6 creatures now, 7 creatures, 8 creatures. I don't know how much life I have at this point. We have an 8-card deep life gain package. We've probably got plenty to use with this card. Speaking of life gain, we also have Noxious Gearhulk. When it enters the battlefield, blow up any creature and you gain life equal to its toughness. Another way to get rid of cards on the board, to trigger our commander and immediately give us the life we need to pay for those cards, whatever they may be. Then we have Tithing Blade. We make every player sacrifice a creature, and then we can craft it with a creature that's in our graveyard to make the Consuming Sepulcher. The Consuming Sepulcher gives us 1 life every single upkeep and making our opponents burn a little bit. So that 1 life is going to trickle in, and it's going to be just added benefit on top of the other life gain that we are getting throughout the turns. Speaking of life gain, we also have the Font of Agony. If we pay life, which because of our life gain package we'll be doing a lot of, whenever we pay life, we put that many blood counters on the Font of Agonies. Then we can remove 4 blood counters to blow up any creature by paying 2 mana. So we're paying life in chunks of 5 to 12 because of how our commander works. That means Font of Agony will be able to blow up 1 to 3 creatures every single time that another creature dies, because we're always going to be paying that life. This card is going to kill so many things. There's a reason I said we are the ones who get to play creature cards. Our opponents don't get to play creatures. We also have ways to kill their artifacts and enchantments, even in mono black. We are going to be the only ones playing a fair game of Magic the Gathering, because remember, we're not playing Turgid. No, Turgid's what people who are assholes play. We're not playing Turgid. We're playing Lorcan. He's fair Turgid, everybody. But there's one last card I need to show you guys. The deck is running a singular board wipe. Now, I know that seems excessive because every card in the deck is killing multiple creatures every time, but this one's special. This one's really special. This is 1 ring to rule them all. The ring tempts us, and then each player will mill cards equal to the ring bearer's power. So usually, because of Lorcan, this is going to be 7. Or it's going to be 6, rather. And then we get to destroy all non-legendary creatures, meaning Lorcan will survive it, and we will get our pick of the litter of all the utility creatures we could possibly gobble up. And then each opponent will lose a life for every creature the card that's in their graveyard. So we have been throwing things to people's graveyards all the time. Anything that we do not immediately consume with Lorcan is going to be a secondary win con with 1 ring to rule them all. We will just burn them to death with this card. Also mind that mill effect that's in the first part of the 1 ring to rule them all. Lorcan doesn't care how a creature touches the graveyard. He doesn't care how they made it there. If they discard the creature, he can steal it. If they mill the creature, he can steal it. And if we kill a creature, he can steal it. So if we make people mill 6 with this card, every creature they put in their graveyard, which is going to be with 3 players, we're looking at 18 cards. There's 18 potential slots that could be creatures that we get to steal from them. Our opponent's playing an Atali, we want that. Our opponent's playing a Reclamation Sage and we need to kill an artifact or enchantment, we want that. 1 ring to rule them all. Anytime you play this with your commander out, if you've got the life points for it, you will guaranteed get a field full of problems. And the best part is, most of those problems will kill more cards, meaning that you get to go further and further into winning the game because you are stealing everybody's stuff and you are fighting almost exclusively with big reanimation targets that are going to be hitting for 5, that are going to be hitting for 6, 4. These are going to be hitting a lot, and they're going to be hitting on mostly clear boards. Because our opponents, unless they're playing a token deck, which we have ways of dealing with that too, we can just snipe the non-tokens. Unless they're playing a token deck, they don't have blockers to deal with us anymore. We've cleared the way. We're the only ones that get creatures. Also, remember, we are turning their own creatures sideways at them. We are guaranteed to get lots of damage in because their blockers are our attackers. By the way, this is a deck that gets to run super smoothly on the budget that it's on. Not only because so many of the cards cost 2 cents. Look at Baleful Beholder. This is one of the few enchantment removals in black, and he costs 2 pennies? Why aren't you guys running this dude? But also, if you look at our our land section, 1 Myriad Landscape, so we can ramp into the commander, and 34 basic swamps. We don't need utility. we are taking everybody else's utility. We get to just play all the black mana and just consistently burn through our deck. It's also why we get to run a land count of 35 instead of my usual 36 to 37, because we don't need to get extra types of lands. We just need to get enough to cast our commander with our ramp spells. As soon as our commander's online, if he doesn't die, or, you know, more likely he does die and we just keep reanimating him with things like Altar of Baal and Dread Return, we get to just control the game from that point on. Players will just be handing us all their best cards, not because they want to, but because they don't have a choice. And if one of the players on the board is playing a black deck, then I guess the minute we play Gary, we're going to kill everybody instantly, because Gary makes people lose life where X is equal to your devotion to black. When it's just Gary and your commander, your devotion is 4, so everybody loses 4 and you gain 12. That's enough to trigger your commander a few times. If we've got like a Death Greeter or a Disciple, Sangromancer, if we've got the fucking Defiler of Flesh, so many of these cards have multiple black pips. If we have any of those on while Gary's out, we're getting enough life to make our commander give us everything we possibly could want, but also just closing out the game in general. So there is Lorcan. Your goal is to dig through your deck with all of your draw spells. Make sure that you are throwing good reanimation targets in the graveyard, like these guys. You want to reanimate them with your super thick reanimation package made of these cards here, and you want to ramp up to your commander as fast as possible using these cards here so that we can start making our opponents lose and then give us creatures in sets of 3 with cards like these ones here. Let me know what you think in the comment section below about Lorcan, also known as Fair Turgid. If you've built Lorcan already, let me know down there. Let me know what things you ran in your deck that made it really good. I wanted to maybe make this a mill deck at one point, but then I realized that we really needed to clear the way for attackers. So I went ahead and went with everybody loses creatures all the time, and we get to steal them all. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you haven't already, and if you got any suggestions for any other decks you want me to do, let me know down there. As always, everybody, insert end of video tagline here. Hey, I just quickly want to give a thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who keep this show running. YouTube and Twitch are a pretty bumpy ride at the best of times, and the stability a Patreon provides me is worth more than I can say here. I also like to thank each and every one of my $20 and up patrons here, and they would be Red Joker, Blitzkrieg, Cameron, Dren, Jemshin, Smiling DM, Poundini, Nabbity Babbity, Naomi, Isaac, Agamotto, Jordan, Ravi, Giuni, Kiratorian, Prisma, all of you, Sagitt, I'm not saying that part, and Starlight. And finally, thank you to everyone else that helps keep this channel alive. While you're here, why not check out another video? And thank you for watching.